Hello, welcome everybody to the midweek mix-up weekend edition, the first of 2023. Sorry for the little bit of a black screen on the changeover there. I was currently trying to update the gameplay in the background whilst the intro was going on. So with the next screen we've got some gameplay whilst we talk, but we'll get the intros done first before we jump into things. But yes, welcome everybody to the first weekend edition of 2023. We're definitely going to be more consistent with the fortnightly weekend editions, regardless of what the topics are. We'll come up with something. We'll have a chill. We'll talk games, have gameplay on, and just relax. I hope everybody in the chat is well. It's great to see everybody, and of course, please share this out for those who might not have seen it go live. But we're going to have some fun today. We've got some awesome topics to cover, some awesome details about Redfall and our thoughts about Redfall, details about Starfield, and many more things, including PSVR 2, the PlayStation 5 debacle about its liquid cooling, and many more things. But before we get into any of that, let's introduce my awesome co-host, the General C. How are you doing today, sir? What you
Hello.
been up to and what you been playing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Been playing me usual, but I also started streaming Demon Souls. The lights catching it.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been playing Demon Souls. Streamed it as well. Streamed it before the show today. Played a few hours of that. Had some technical issues that I had to resolve, but yeah, we got there in the end. Um, Obviously Sea of Thieves as well. Been playing that. Like I mentioned on Wednesday, I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4, which I need to get back to. But now I think Demon Souls has got me. I'm kind of addicted to that. It's a hell of a lot of fun. A challenge as well. Every boss that I've come across so far, I've actually beat first time, and there's stream footage there to see that. Apart from like the very first boss you like interact with, because that thing just kills you in one hit, and I think that's meant to happen. Like every other boss after that is seems to be easily killable for me. I don't know if that's going to be the case forever in the game, but yeah, it's been a breeze so far fighting the bosses. I've had more struggle with the normal sort of like smaller enemies than I have the main bosses. Yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping back into that, and I'm probably going to pick up Elden Ring real soon because I'm enjoying Demon Souls. Not really the Souls type of person either, so I typically stay away from these types of games. But yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Definitely, definitely. What is it? What is that that's getting you about it so far? Then what is it that's kind of really interesting you?
I think the challenge is what's interested me, and there was one boss that I did have a little bit of a struggle with. That's the Tower Knight. But once you figure out like how to take that boss on, it becomes so much easier. And I know this is the first boss you fight after the one that kills you because that's meant to happen, if I'm correct. Um, there was a point where I was like, okay, so how do I fight this boss? But you fight things that sort of come from that boss a little bit earlier than you fight that boss, and that boss takes fire damage. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to throw a firebomb at one of these creatures because they sort of like throw spears at you, and it does fire damage. And I was like, okay, that clicked with me, and I was like, this boss is going to be done with fire damage basically. Then when I actually got to the boss, so like just figuring out how to defeat all the bosses more easily um, is pretty cool. So that challenge of finding that out appeals to me at the moment. I don't know how long that'll last because I got frustrated with God of War for having my ass kicked so much by those bloody berserkers and Gnar as well. She was a pain in the ass. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the challenge, but also not looking forward to getting to the point where the challenge is like infuriating.
That's what I will say about Elden Ring. Like the challenge is immediately relatively infuriating. Like as soon as you stand outside for the first time and you see the guy on horseback, like he will one shot kill you because you literally no levels, so you have to avoid him, otherwise you will just die repeatedly forever. Because you've got nothing and you know you haven't got any weapons really, and there's no real levels, so you avoid him, you level up, you come back, and then you can beat his ass. But
Yeah,
um,
that's what I'm looking forward to trying that out, seeing how frustrated I get with Elden Ring. But I don't know, I'm kind of enjoying Demon Souls at the moment. And like I said, I'm not really typically into Souls games. The only other Souls game I ever played before was Dark Souls 1. I never completed that, and that was a few years back.
Yeah, it was Dark Souls 2 was my first, and see, I've got Demon Souls sitting on the console as well, and I really should get to it and play it, but I've got other things to play. But Elden Ring, I actually really enjoyed Elden Ring, despite it being difficult and having the multiplayer is not the best, and they could have done a much easier option of getting multiplayer working. And once it's in, it works fine, but it's just so overly complicated to get your friend in the game. Like, it requires a certain thing, and you've got to point your finger to the sky, and he's got to write something on the floor, and it's like this complex, like casting a spell to get your friend in the game. It's like, why? Can't I just invite him and he appears?
Yeah, that's something that kind of pisses me off about the Souls games, because I think most of them are like that. You got to put something down on the floor, and then they've got to see it. And if like somehow you're not in the right instance, you won't see it. So it don't let you into each other's games. It can be a lot of messing around to get that to work. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think I'm just gonna play it as a single player game and enjoy it as a single player game and not worry too much about co-op.
Yeah. So other than that, it is it's a very interesting single player game. Like you say, it's definitely challenging. There's not many games that are too challenging these days, and to be fair, you have to be in the right mind frame to want a challenge. The vast majority of the games that I play, I don't put them on anything above normal difficulty usually, because I just want to enjoy the game. Especially story games, you just want to enjoy it. You don't really want the challenge. You just want to relax and have fun with the game. But there's certain games like your Elden Rings and your Souls games and things like that, where there isn't a difficulty spike. There's nothing. It's just you play it or you don't. You either get good or you die.
Yeah, there's no difficulty options. You just have to go through and adapt to the challenge, level up to prepare for each boss a bit more. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Dare I say, I might be a Souls fan after completing Demon Souls. So we'll find out. I'm not there yet. I'm not going to say I'm a Souls fan yet, because there might be a point in this game where I'll just rip out all my hair. But yeah,
To be fair,
I'm
Demon
enjoying it.
Souls is one of the um, most beloved Souls games that there is, and people are crying out for that 60 frames patch.
Yeah,
For
that's
the
why people
PlayStation
were
5.
demanding the remake a long time ago, and then they finally did it. And people are also asking for the same for Bloodborne. That's another one I haven't touched, but I expect them to do that at some point. I mean, this is remade by Bluepoint, and PlayStation own Bluepoint now, and they own Demon Souls and they own Bloodborne. So I'd imagine they're going to put Bluepoint onto Bloodborne next.
Hopefully. Well, people have been crying out for it, and they just want to play it in 60 frames, basically. Like, graphically, it's beautiful, so doesn't need anything really done to it that way. Just 60 frames. I think
I'm
people would
honestly
love.
surprised that Demon Souls hasn't made its way to PC yet.
Give it time. It will.
It will, but I'm just surprised it ain't there yet. I mean, it could be announced really any time now that it's coming to PC.
I think
I do expect it.
I think when they, to be fair, I think when they do announce it going to PC, that's when PlayStation players will get the the 60 frames definitive edition version that'll be resold at $70. Because you don't get those free enhancements free there. It literally just needs a patch, 60 frames patch, nothing more. Everything else is fine. But hey ho,
Patch.
yeah, the greatness patch. But hey ho. Anything else you've been playing? I know you've been jumping back on Hunt
No, that's
Showdown
it,
as well.
really. I did jump back into Hunt Showdown. Streamed a bit of that yesterday, but yeah, I'm only really streaming towards the weekend now because I've got other things that I need to do throughout the week. So yeah, my focus is Fridays, Saturdays, and sometimes Sundays to stream. If I can stream a little bit earlier in the day before weekend showtime.
Definitely. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I haven't been, to be fair, I haven't been gaming much specifically since Wednesday. I did obviously the podcast with Archie. That was a long one because we had Special Nick on, so we didn't finish till like In fact, I don't think I finished till like midnight or something like that. So I was like, yeah, there's no gaming happening tonight.
Uh,
It was a
Nick
4 hour
loves to
show.
talk.
It was 4 hours.
Remember, yeah, we had the 4 hour show with him as well, and I just remember it being fun, just talking about all sorts, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have
So,
Nick on, you know it's going to be a long show.
oh, absolutely. And if anybody listening to this show is wanting Nick on their podcasts, Nick is actually off for the entirety of January. So if you're wanting him on your show, now is the best time to ask, because otherwise, obviously, Australian time, it's nigh on impossible to get it organised. Because by the time we go live in the morning, he is literally 12 hours the opposite. So if we're going live at 7 o'clock at night, it's 7 o'clock in the morning for him. Vice versa. If we start at 6, it's 6 o'clock in the morning for him. So hard to organise. It means he needs to get up super early just to jump on a podcast with us lot. But yeah, other than that, I started editing a video. Biggest games coming to Xbox in 2023. Unfortunately, that video was super delayed, mainly because I didn't realize just how long it was going to take us to actually edit what I needed it in the video. But secondly, I've had some big issues with Premiere Pro rendering out the video, the final video clips that I needed to go into this big video. But not very well. It's failed twice, so I'm gonna have to re-render these last couple of bits. Thankfully, it shouldn't take too much longer. But instead of going out to members first, the video will be up by tomorrow, but it'll be up to everybody at the same time. The next video I do, which will likely be a deep dive into Redfall, and give kind of everything you need to know about Redfall, on one video. That'll go out to members first, and then it'll go out to the public. And I don't foresee that one being a difficult job to create. So should be a much easier one to do on an editing front, more just a research front.
The joys of editing software, I'll tell you that. It really puts me off of editing videos sometimes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But other than that, the one game that has been keeping me busy, outside, oh yeah, I did actually manage to get into a couple of games of Call of Duty and Warzone with Pat and his sister the other day, which was awesome. But other than that, the one game that's been keeping me busy recently, as you know, and as I said in the middle of the week, is Spider-Man. And I've got that game ready to play after this as well. Once we're done with the show and things like that, I'm gonna get myself an hour or so on. I say an hour or so. It's never a friggin' hour or so. I always end up and I'm like, oh, just one more mission, just one more heist, just one more this, just one more that.
3 hours later, you're
3
still
hours
there.
later. Yeah. So, but I'm determined to platinum that game as well. I'm not going to do the DLC for it, but I am going to do Miles Morales after that.
It's not a massive task to platinum that game. Just towards the end, it becomes a bit tedious with the little crimes around the city, which can be annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should take around like 25 hours to platinum. That's sort of how long it took me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've heard. 25, 30 hours maybe is max, depending on what you're doing and how quick it is to get there. And to be fair, I've probably slowed myself down by not realizing I could fast travel to certain places. So now I can fast travel. I didn't realize I could.
To be honest, I didn't use the fast travel much anyway because I just enjoyed swinging around the city.
I mean, the fast travel would be pretty much instantaneous on PlayStation 5, but on PlayStation 4 it isn't. So you've got to wait for that weird load screen that comes up and it tells you tips. So, but yeah, but you're getting an achievement anyway for riding the subway 5 times, which is fast traveling. But yeah, no, it is. I'm really enjoying the game. It's made me more likely when I get a PlayStation 5 to get Spidey 2. When that comes out. It is disappointing though that despite what we saw in the trailer for Spidey with both Miles Morales and Spider-Man, thinking that maybe we'd have a co-op Spider-Man where one person's Miles, the other person's Spidey. That's not the case. It is single player.
If you've obviously your significant way through the story, it'll be like that back and forth, where sometimes you're playing as Mary Jane every now and then, or there are missions. I don't know if you've got that far though, where you do play as Miles. but not for very long. You don't play as him as
I've got
Spider-Man
that
or
far.
anything.
Yeah, I've got that far. The basic background story essentially to what happens and how he gets into
Hmm.
to do what he wants to do. Yeah, I've done that section there where everything's going to shit.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I'd imagine it'd just be more of that. Like you'll play maybe half the game as Miles Morales and then half the game as Peter Parker, something like that. I think
It's a bit
they
of a
should do
shame,
less of that
I think. I think it's a
Mary
bit of a
Jane
shame.
style missions though, because I found them boring. Like when you were playing as Mary Jane, sneaking
Yeah,
around, just kind
thankfully
of
they're not very
took me
long.
out of it.
Thankfully they're
Mm.
not very long.
Less of those in Spider-Man 2, please. More actual Spider-Man.
I think we
We're
will
not
see
playing
more
Mary
Spidey
Jane.
because now they've already hinted at Venom as being as one of the
Mm.
bad guys in there, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to work because Venom's a pain on the arse.
See, my theory with that is Venom's going to show up sort of early in the game. You fight Venom, the symbiote will then attach itself to one of the two Spider-Men, making you as a Spider-Man fight the other Spider-Man. That's kind of what I'm going to theorize towards will happen.
We'll see. We shall see. But lots of topics to get into today. As I mentioned, of course, we've got awesome news about Redfall.
Mm-hmm.
We've got awesome news about Starfield. We've got first impressions of the PlayStation VR 2, and of course, they're saying they're going to have 30 games for launch. As mentioned, of course, there is other little news articles and things we need to speak about, including the liquid metal cooling that's in PlayStation 5 having a longevity issue. But we'll touch on that. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about why me and Jen aren't bothered. Uh, but before we get into any of that, I'm going to change over and we're going to get some gameplay on. Hopefully this gameplay loads and it doesn't go into just black screen on the gameplay and just have me and Jen with the camera. But let's switch over to the gameplay and then we'll start getting into these topics. Oh yeah. Oh. Well, they can hear us, but they won't be able to see us yet. There we go. Oh, there's Jen. Jen, you're on. Hello. I'll get my camera on. There we go. There we go. Better. All done. Right, terrific. So yes, you've got some Spidey 2018 footage for you in the background here. This is obviously me playing it. This is on the PlayStation 4 Pro. As you can see, it still looks and feels terrific. So hopefully that comes across in the video as well. Just had some fun throwing people around. To be fair, this is more of an exploration video as well of me playing. So I'm like gathering backpacks and doing like some of the crimes that are going on around the city and things like that. So this is still early on in my gameplay. I've just got one of the white suits on. I've changed the suit again now, so no, I'm having fun with it. But yes, one of the news articles that I want to speak about, and it's a more positive one. It's a nice big update on Redfall, which is actually rumored to. So all of these titles are actually definitively coming out in the first half of the year. Each of the studios have reiterated that it will be out first half of the year. So it's thankfully. It is a case of just literally waiting for the Xbox event, which is going to be announced literally within the next week or so. And that Xbox event is going to be pretty soon. It isn't. We've heard kind of mixed things about that event as well. Some are saying that the event is going to be larger than we thought, and some are saying the opposite. Some are saying it's going to be smaller than we thought. Either way, it's going to be an event that will cover off things such as the release dates for all of the games coming the first half of 2023. We have had reiterations from Minecraft Legends that it is launching in the spring. We have reiterations from Bethesda that Starfield is definitely releasing in the first half of 2023. We know Redfall is definitely releasing first half 2023. And we know Forza is definitely releasing, or at least has a launch window of spring 23. So could be any time in the spring, which is quite a big section of time. But it's obviously good news. But the first chunk of news that we got was from Redfall, and this is the first chap that I saw posted anyway. And of course, all these guys do their digging into all of this, and this was by the way of Games Radar originally, who had a post up about it, and it's actually a quite in-depth article, thankfully. Clobril and a few of the other larger accounts have kind of broke it down into summaries, which makes it a lot shorter to digest as opposed to paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of info, which has quotations from the developers and things like that as well. But I'm going to run through that first, and then we'll have a discussion on it. So, new Redfall information by way of Clobril on Twitter. Redfall offers an unfathomably larger open world than the space than Prey's Talos Station. Home base, where you can talk to NPCs and get side quests. Story-driven missions and free roam. Gunplay crucial. Hired FPS specialist id Software to help with gunplay, which is absolutely awesome news. To be fair, if you want a gunplay specialist, id are probably the best you can ask.
Yeah, that excites me.
I think it's excited a lot of people, to be fair. There's a lot of people that have looked at this game and thought, and then they've seen the fact that id are helping them with the gunplay on it, and they thought, haha, wait a minute. Now that's interesting me. And I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. A little quotation from one of the developers here. It says, "We want you creeping through a cornfield at night in the fog, hearing vampires whisper in the dark. Maybe you'll spot a farmhouse in the distance, only to find that it's full of cultists and a few trapped survivors who you can save." That's the kind of vibe that Redfall has. 2 distinct districts, a sprawling urban area and a rural designed area. Many of these aspects of Redfall aren't predefined activities, but part of the simulated space. Day and night changes the feel of the game radically. Dynamic dialogue system of players talking to each other. Further, they said to this, if Redfall comes together at the quality of level we think it will, then it'll be a different beast. It's really tremendous. It does a lot of cool stuff. So yes, a lot of cool bits of information there. But what do you make of the updates to Redfall there so far then?
It's made me a lot more excited than I was before, because as most of us kind of expected it to be a little bit like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood, I wasn't really all that bothered. I was going to play it because it was in Game Pass, but now I'm going to play it definitely because it's like the way they explain it is it's more as if a bit like a Destiny meets Far Cry sort of vibes going on with it. Obviously, you're not going to be traveling to different worlds. You're just going to be in this more of like a rural, urban sort of area. So yeah, I'm way more excited about it now. I mean, it's vampires. Vampires are cool, and there's like cultists in there as well. So that should be interesting. But in terms of looter shooters, that's sort of where they lose me, because I even get lost with Destiny because of the looting aspect. I've been like on and off of Destiny multiple times. You've jumped into it again with me recently, and I do want to get back into it when the new content comes out. But again, I get lost with, I don't know what guns are good if I've been away from the game for so long. So hopefully they've got it together where they can keep you up to pace with weapons and such that come to the game if they've got content that comes to it over time. If I'm correct, it's not a live service game, right?
No, it's not a live service game. No, it is one play. So you can play it solo, or you can play it with up to 4 people. And one thing they did reiterate as well, unlike the likes of Left 4 Dead, which was originally compared to, everyone can technically choose the same character if they want to. So you can all play as the same person if you really want to. You can't just you don't select a person and it's like, nope, that person is chosen, so yeah, you can't use them. No, everyone can use the same person if they really want to. As weird as that'll be in the open world.
Whether I'll play this solo is another thing, though. I think to me it more appeals as a co-op game, and they've said some cool things about like if you're playing the game co-op and someone else is playing as a different character, there'll like be lines of dialogue between characters, and the more that happens, you'll unlock this sort of like a buff, a trust sort of buff between the characters. So that could be a interesting mechanic to use, like to see how that works when you've played co-op with a friend multiple times, and then seeing what that sort of mechanic does to the ongoing story, and as the characters talk more, how the story plays out that way could be really interesting as well.
Yeah, completely agree, and that's what I meant about dynamic dialogue as well, which means it's kind
Mm,
of it happens when it happens. It's not like pre-script. Well, it is obviously scripted, but it's not like you can only speak to them for
mm,
certain things. Like they might start conversations with you or things like that. It certainly seems quite interesting, to be fair. And one of the quotes that I saw as well from that same Games Radar thing is it's not as much as a Borderlands as it is more kind of Arcane's vision of a Far Cry esque game, where it's this big explorable open world and you can kind of go and do as you please in it.
mm.
Um, as opposed to a Borderlands where
My
it's
dog's
kind of
snoring. Sorry.
yeah, I can hear that. As opposed to a Borderlands where it's like this kind of whimsical thing with like ridiculous amounts of weapons and
Mm,
stuff. It's more like Far Cry where you have your set weapons, you have your powers and things like that. And you can upgrade things, so you can upgrade your characters, you can upgrade your abilities. Um, of course, you get certain weapons, you can find certain weapons. There is loot that you can go and find, and
mm,
there's side quests and things like that. So it's far more in depth than I thought, but I think that what a
mm.
lot of people are
I
excited
think
about.
that's probably what will lose my attention span with this game real quick is the looting aspect, because I just got tired of games like that. I mean, it's why I fell off of what was that bloody game by People Can Fly that came out a few years ago? Um, Outriders. It's why I lost interest in that really fast. I just don't get on too well these days with looter shooters, especially after like the first Destiny, where you had worked countless hours to get all the guns, and then obviously it was probably not going to happen with Redfall, but losing that with Destiny 2 really pissed me off. And that's what like as that's why I've had issues going back to Destiny on and off multiple times, because I'm like, do I really want to do this to myself again, build up and then lose it all? And thankfully, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen with Destiny anytime soon, because they've said they're no longer going to vault content. So I don't know. Maybe Redfall will be that game that gets me back into looter shooters. I guess we'll find out.
I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as extensive a looter shooter as the likes of Destiny or
Mm,
Borderlands. I think it's going to be far more drawn back. Yes, there's going to be. I think yes, there's going to be loot. It might be loot in the terms of outfits for the characters. It could be loot in the terms of a couple of weapons and things like that. But I don't think it's going to be that type of loot. I think if anything, it might be more loot as in survival type things. So it
yeah.
might be like health or certain abilities or something like that. But I think it's going to be a little bit
Mm,
different. But of course, it's a far different world. And Arcane have made some great games, but I think
mm,
people are right as well. It's not going to be. It's not going to do big numbers. I don't think. But mainly because Arcane aren't one of these. Um, it's not that they're a group, not a great developer. It's because they're not like one of these mega studios, the likes of Bethesda, who make Skyrim and of course are making Starfield, or Insomniac, who are doing Spider-Man, or um, of course the Coalition with Gears, or Halo. Even as much as we've ranted and raved about that, that of course is still a big name, and any normal
mm.
casual knows what Halo is. Um, or your Call of Duties with Activision, or your Uncharted, which of course had a film now, so that's boosted that up. But Arcane hasn't got that, but they certainly have pedigree, and they've
Yeah,
always
yeah.
created great
They're
games.
definitely not one of those like studios that has like a weight to their name, like Bethesda or 343. I mean, there's not been such great things from 343, but like Bungie, Coalition with Gears, like those sort of names like
Oh
Naughty
yeah, I
Dog
would
as
say
well.
Insomniac. I
They
would say
have a weight
Insomniac,
that is carried with them.
or without like Insomniac and Playground Games, I think are the both of them are the most reliable studios in the business, without shadow of a doubt.
I think
Um,
Arcane is more one of them studios that is still growing in popularity, and
oh,
I
absolutely.
think if um if Redfall does well and people stick to that game and word of mouth travels, they have a potential to be a big name in gaming.
Absolutely.
And I
I
think
think you
that's
know what it is. The
exactly
one
what
thing I
Redfall is. It's one of them games that you if it does do well, you'll be telling your friends about, and they'll go out and play it, pick up Game Pass or whatever, play it on their PC or on their console. So yeah, it's a game that has potential.
yeah, one thing I would say as well is I think this could be Arcane's break into popularity if all goes well. And I really hope it
Yeah.
is for them because they do create really great games. And Prey for me is better than Dishonored. And I know a lot of people love Dishonored, but I prefer Prey. Such a cool game with a cool kind of system there where it kind of morphs into different objects and you don't know where these things are. And it can kind of just turn into like a table. And you kind of just go into a
Mm.
room and you're like, you know they're everywhere, or they could be everywhere, but you don't know when they could appear or turn into whatever.
Yeah, you have to
um,
like pay attention to the sounds and all that to sort of get an idea of where they are.
But such a cool game, and I just hope that this is their big break, and I do hope it does numbers. I think it's not going to be one that does numbers immediately, but I think it could be one of those games that, if done well and if it works, because again, this is the first multiplayer game from Arcane as well.
Mhm.
So it's brand new for them to make a game that is multiplayer. You've got to think a lot of games these days, in terms of their popularity and how well it does, is highly reliant, especially for the casual masses, on if a streamer picks it up and enjoys it and has fun with it on stream, and the people watch them having fun with it on stream. And we're talking about big streamers here. That's when the casuals pick it up, and that's when it starts to do big numbers. So, and I think the market itself has become more reliant on big streamers getting a hold of these games and having fun with them on stream, to increase kind of word of mouth than it ever has been before. Um,
Mm,
we
definitely,
saw
yeah.
that with the launch of Halo. When Halo launched, it did big numbers because everyone was streaming it and everyone was having fun with it. And the online was fun at first. And the reason everyone dropped off it and the reason why its popularity dropped dramatically was because it just had no content.
Mm. They had no pipeline of content. They
Yeah,
had
there was
one
nothing to back it
season
up.
in 1 year with two maps, and then obviously now things are slightly different and starting to look like they're going in the right direction. But unfortunately, most people have lost interest there now because you kind of screwed the pooch,
Yep.
basically, with not sticking to that content pipeline and not getting things out and keep pushing things back and keep breaking promises and such like that. People just lose interest and get tired of the excuses at that point.
So yeah, I think this could be. I think if all goes well, obviously if it's gunplay by id Tech, um, then the gunplay is going to be insane. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be super smooth. The gameplay is going to be fun. Um, we've saw kind of the particle effects and the graphics and things like that, so we know it looks pretty. Um, just got to hope it hits it with both the story and the content of the game as well. One thing I hope it doesn't do is kind of outstay its welcome. I hope it's a good game, but I hope it's not like grievously like long. Maybe it's like a 25-30 hour game, and I think Xbox need more of those. Like Xbox, I
Yeah.
think don't have many games that are, and of course, what you want is replayability. So if it's 25-30 hours long, great. Obviously, it could be done, but
Mm.
you also want it to be able to go back to it at some point and say, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I'm going to go back to that and play it. Or I really enjoyed the campaign. I'll play that again. You need some kind of replayability. And if you've got 4 characters and they can all level up and things like that, then you've got a level of replayability there anyway. Um, so
I'm wondering what kind of end game content they're going to have for Redfall that keeps people coming back round to it.
See, I can see this being, because I think even with Prey they had DLC for Prey, and I can see them doing some kind of DLC for Redfall, like maybe it's a new area, and then that new area brings a new threat, like some new super vampire that's come out, and this super vampire can withstand being out in daylight, and you've got like to figure out how to beat him and things. There's with
They have
regards
mentioned
vampires.
about like god type vampires. They basically mentioned they call him rooks, and that sounds pretty interesting. Is it going to be like are they going to do something similar to Destiny's raids, where maybe you have to like go into like a vampire's lair and fight them in on their own sort of like territory, such like that? That could be something interesting if done right. And then you got the potential that there could be downloadable content coming out in the future. I don't think there's like any talks of a season pass or anything like that. But I'd imagine if it does like launch and it's successful, um, this could become a potential franchise, like that offshoots other games. Maybe we could see uh, werewolves or such in that, and or other types of supernatural creatures pop up in the game, or even in DLC content.
Definitely, definitely. I think the good thing is it's the vampire type of games, other than Vampire the Masquerade and things like that. Like in terms of the actual genre itself, unlike zombies, for instance, which has been done to death now, the vampire section really hasn't been done,
It
not to
never took off
AAA
in game. I mean,
standards.
there's been vampire games, but they've all been not so good.
That's what I'm saying. And unlike the zombie genre, even though there has been vampire games, there hasn't really, in the grand scheme of things, there's been maybe a handful at most. Whereas zombies, there's probably at least 50 to 100 zombie games, at least, and they've all
Probably
been
more
done to
than that.
death. Yeah, at least, and it's been done to death, which is why, like, if people watch Angry Joe, for instance, he had that thing like, "Want to play another zombie game? Want to play another
He's got that
zombie
running
game?"
joke where whenever a zombie game or something that's sort of kind of like a zombie genre, he always brings that joke back.
Yeah,
Hey Joe, want to play a zombie game?
yeah, exactly. And there's so many of them. So, and I think that's one of the things that really didn't like as much. I've got Days Gone, but one thing I didn't really entice me about playing Days Gone too much is because unfortunately, it was just another zombie game. Like it didn't feel too different. Yes, it had its Sony like story to it, where it was like more of an in-depth story than your regular zombie game. But the genre itself needed a break, to be honest. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still not touching Dead Island 2. Yes, people kind of look forward to that. I know you're looking forward to that, but
That's
I'm
the thing.
all zombied out.
I got tired of zombie games, and I didn't play a whole lot in recent years. I mean, I'll make exceptions for Last of Us. Um, Days Gone, I made an exception for, and I really enjoyed Days Gone. But like, there was a point where I was buying every zombie game that came out nearly. So I got bored of it. That genre was so oversaturated. I'm glad that it's quietened down because there's very few zombie games releasing nowadays. But hopefully, Dead Island doesn't sort of bring this resurgence of zombie games back because no one wants to see that again.
I don't, and you know what it is. I was really looking, and this isn't because the game wasn't great, because it was average at best. But when Back for Blood come out, I thought, yeah, I could kind of quite enjoy playing that again. I remember playing Left 4 Dead 2, and I've really enjoyed that. But I just got so bored of playing it like really quickly.
I don't think I even got halfway through Back for Blood's campaign before I was
Oh,
over
I
hooked
had to
onto
go
this.
back with it, and that's only because my mate kind of forced us into playing it with him. Um,
Mm.
but after that, I was just like, I'm done with the whole zombie thing. Like, I'm done.
Mm.
Like, it's me finished. I'm not gonna play any more zombie games. I'll eventually get round to finishing Days Gone just for the story and finishing that off, but it wasn't really for me. But Redfall, it's like I say, it's a relatively untouched category in the grand scheme of things. Vampires have a lot of kind of avenues you can go down, and you can kind of go to super vampires, as you mentioned. They've got god vampires in it,
And
so they
then they've
can.
got like other supernatural things they can do.
Exactly.
I mean, werewolves and vampires are usually pit against each other. They could do something there with that.
Like a war. Like you go into a certain
Mm.
section and werewolves have appeared and there's a war going on between the werewolves and the vampires and
And then you've got to fight both of them. Uh, I would laugh if they put an Easter egg in that game of just a sparkly vampire walking around.
or a reference to it. Oh, dear me.
That'd be funny. Just like a vampire that's got like bits of disco ball glued to him. That would be
Yeah.
funny.
Oh, dear me. Masuko, it's because to prevent echoes or anything like that, I'm just muting myself every now and again. So sometimes I mute prematurely and then just cut myself off. So, so if that happens, sound hasn't died. I've just accidentally muted myself. I'm just learning from Boxenberger how to mute myself and just talk forever. Uh, but no, aside from that, I'm actually now I am more excited for Redfall than I have been. So I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing what this world's about. Playing some of the powers, definitely the co-op. I'm certainly looking forward to playing co-op. Thankfully we've got a whole group of us that are all going to be playing Redfall when it launches. So I know we'll all be playing. We'll jump into, and thankfully it's like you say, it's a story game as well. So we'll be able to jump into the story and play it all with friends, which is great.
I think I'm looking forward to exploration most in this game.
Yeah, seeing what's round and the sound. I think we'll all be wearing headphones. I know that for sure.
That does intrigue me when they say that you can hear vampires whispering.
Yes. Well, especially like they said in the dark when you're in like a cornfield and things like that, and you can just hear and be like, "Oh Jesus Christ!"
Yep.
So
those things, those sort of like atmospheric horror effects intrigue me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And they've mentioned about there'd be like different bases that you can come across that people have lived in, and you can turn on like the UV lights and basically bait them up as a trap and lure a vampire into it, and then activate the lights to kill them. So that'll be pretty interesting. Seeing how we can all pull that off as a team. Should be
yeah,
a lot of fun there as well if we're streaming it.
definitely. I'm actually really looking forward to it now, and I'm super glad that kind of the more they speak about it, for a change, the more they speak about it, and the more they give us details about kind of how it's been worked on and who they've got help with for certain things, it's actually getting more people interested in it. And fingers crossed for Arcane. This is the start of something brilliant for them. Prey was a great. You know what it is? I'd love for them to go back to Prey at some point as well. But and I think Dishonored. I think people would love a new kind of Dishonored as
I'm
well.
not
But
sure they will go back to Prey because I don't
yeah,
think they originally even wanted to work on it, right? They were given
yeah,
Prey.
yeah.
So I'd imagine they want to just do their own thing, and maybe
And I'm
someone else will
glad.
take Prey.
Yeah, and I'm glad they are. I'm glad Redfall is that thing, and
Mm.
of course it's a new IP, it's a new setting, new characters, new ideas.
And they're
We
allowed
know
to
it's
take
gonna have.
risk as well with the fact that it's their first multiplayer experience. So
Yeah,
that intrigues me to see how they're going to pull that off.
and like we know now, thankfully, and I've said this multiple times already on this stream, but working with id Tech for the gunplay is the best thing they could have done, and it's great that they've worked in house with one of the other teams to get that up and running and get that combat and gameplay down so well. We know it's going to be buttery smooth now, so one thing we can guarantee is the gunplay is going to be fun, the combat's going to be fun.
Definitely with id
Much
helping them out.
like we said for a few of the other games that released, God of War for instance, before that released, I said I know the gameplay is going to be fire. The one thing I need to make sure is that the story's great, and lo and behold, of course, the story was great. And that's the only thing now that I'm thinking about with Redfall is, okay, now I know the gameplay is going to be fire, and there's now the only thing I'm I'm hoping is that they've got a cool story to go along with the awesome gameplay.
They should do. A lot of people I talk to say that the Dishonored games are really good in the story department, and the lore there is really good. So I have faith there that they can pull it off.
Yeah, and to be honest, the Prey games had a really cool story as well. They weren't no slouch. They were really cool.
I need to get back round to completing Prey because I did do a partial play on it, but then like just other games, man, they always get in the way.
Definitely, definitely. Gruesome Glenn says definitely prefer JRPGs to WRPGs. And to be fair, I don't blame you. Like, I'm a huge JRPG fan, and there is an awesome one coming out for Xbox this year, exclusively and on Game Pass. And yes, it is an indie title, but it's definitely highly anticipated. I'll touch on that a little bit later on, so stick around. But of course, the next bit of news that we've got is another one of Xbox's big releases this year. And that is, of course, the Starfield. Now, people know this game, highly anticipated, of course. I know Mick on our show is probably Mick and and Boxy are probably the ones looking forward to it most because they complete these giant open world games like multiple times over. I don't have the time for it,
I'm
otherwise I
really
would.
looking forward to it, but with it being Bethesda's newest IP, I am sort of hesitant.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm not as hyped for it as I would be if it was Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5.
yeah,
But yeah, either way, I'm going to play it. So, and maybe my opinion will change.
yeah. And actually, another one to get a little bit of assistance from id Tech on the gunplay department is Starfield. Uh, so id Tech have been busy. So in terms of gunplay, Starfield has definitely stepped it up. And to be honest, before I even knew that, when I seen the actual gameplay footage for the first time, that's one thing I noticed immediately. The gunplay looked a lot tighter than any Fallout game that I've seen, and I think you might have noticed that as well. The gunplay
Definitely,
on
it looks more
Starfield's video
smooth
look,
and fluid.
yeah,
Gunplay in Fallout can feel very clunky
very janky.
and like
Yeah,
robot-like.
very janky, very janky. But yeah. So the rumor coming out here, and this is not just your standard rumor. This is what a lot of big people have been hearing from people that they know are playtesting. So it's not just a case of, okay, I've heard from a source who's heard from a source. It's like I've heard from someone who is playtesting. And this is where the article kind of comes into play. So Starfield rumored to be bigger and more ambitious than playtesters expectations. Bethesda's upcoming action RPG Starfield is more ambitious than playtesters had been expecting, based on the latest rumors. During the latest episode of XNC, of course, Colt Eastwood, as we know, that he's heard from a channel of people who have presumably been playtesting Starfield that Bethesda's forthcoming RPG is bigger and more ambitious than what was previously expected. According to Eastwood sources, Starfield is bigger than anything seen in Skyrim and Fallout. It takes everything the studio did with these two games and considerably expands upon them. It claims to have spoken to a channel of playtesters who have been closely involved with the game, and he's been hearing great things about it. Based on what he's heard, Bethesda has nailed the sense of scale. So, of course, it is a huge exploration space game. So, by scale, you want to feel kind of slightly insignificant, if that makes sense. You want to feel, obviously, if you go out into space and you see planet Earth for the first time from the middle of the stars and you look down and all you see is just this dot of a planet and you think, Jesus Christ, I'm tiny, but look at the size of that thing. And then you see all the other kind of planets in the solar system. That's really what can make you feel the sense of scale. So it sounds like that's what's kind of been achieved there. He said that he doesn't intend on overselling Starfield to fans, but all he's been hearing are positive impressions from the people he's spoken to, some of who claimed were pessimistic about the game when going into playtesting. Previously, a
That's sort of
support
where
page
I
for
am.
Starfield.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about it at the moment. I mean, I'm excited for it, but I'm not hyped.
Yeah. Previously, a support page for Starfield was launched on Bethesda's official site, implying the game may be near to release, implying the game is rumored to arrive before Redfall. The game is rumored to arrive before Redfall. I would say now the actual rumor for Starfield is June. The release for Redfall is May. Those are the more we've seen May for Redfall. Like that is the stuff we've physically seen is May, and it looks legitimate. And that's quite a few people that have said that now. So it looks like May is definitely Redfall. People are saying possibly March for Starfield, but
I don't know about that.
I've also heard and have information myself that says Forza is spring. So I know that Forza is definitely in the spring, which would put it between March to May. So I would think that would be March or April. So I can't see Starfield releasing in March, Forza releasing in April, Redfall releasing in May. Like that's too many big games back to back. And they said one a quarter. Ideally, of course, they need to get 3 games out in 6 months, which is more than one a quarter. But essentially, what you would technically be having here is possibly Forza in March. You'd have May for Redfall and
that.
end of June
Forza
for
will come mid March, I reckon,
yeah,
and then Starfield May, and then not Starfield May, Redfall May, and then Starfield June. That's what I expect. Redfall is more of a smaller game in the eyes of most gamers. We're excited for it, but on terms of a Forza and a Starfield, you
yeah,
can put Redfall in between a Starfield and a Forza, and it'll be all right because it's it's relatively new. We all know Starfield is a new IP, but it's Bethesda. Their name carries weight, so their games are going
yeah.
to sell no matter what.
And from what we've heard, they were intent on releasing that game in November last year. If they were not part of Microsoft or Xbox, that game would most definitely have released in November. But it would have been your traditional bug Bethesda. It would have been absolutely full of bugs. And that's where Microsoft
And
stepped
we
in
would
and
never
said,
have heard the end of it saying,
yeah,
"Oh, Microsoft can't handle this," blah blah blah. That yeah.
that's where Microsoft stepped in. So when you seen that photo of all of them in the theater watching the Starfield gameplay, that's when Microsoft essentially stepped in and said, nope. Like, it looks great as a game, but delay it and polish it up. Like, you need to get some of these bugs out, and that's what they did. So Microsoft have stepped in, and we're going to get a much less Bugthesda than we've ever had before, which is obviously a good thing for fans, because the community's usually the ones that end up fixing half the bugs before Bethesda do. So hopefully we won't have that issue this time around. And by the sounds of things, the mega delay that we've had, which would almost be 8 months, would be essentially literally to just iron out bugs. Not for anything other than that.
You can guarantee they're working on content for that as well. They're not
Yeah.
just ironing out bugs. They're working
Oh,
on
absolutely.
probably some free content and like the bigger expansions that will come after it, like you get with the Fallout games and the Skyrim game, not Skyrim games, the Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah. And one
So
of the
you
things
can
that
fully expect, they've got a huge amount of content in the pipeline for Starfield, and that's stuff that they're working on too.
yeah. And one of the things that Bethesda also shared, because obviously very recently they shared a new article as well, which details more on the story, quests, and factions that are set in Starfield. Obviously, Starfield is set in space where there's different planets and cities to explore, but it will be possible to visit Earth as well. Earth is known as the old neighborhood in the game, and some quests will take us back to Earth. So despite being set in Constellation, Earth is actually in the game and you can go there, but the planet is known as Old Neighborhood, which is naturally your old stomping ground before humanity moved away from Earth and went to a new planet to set up, which is Constellation.
It'll be interesting to see what Earth looks like in that sort of environment, or if they've
Yeah.
done it so like it's an abandoned wasteland mostly or something like that. That would be cool.
Yeah,
So I'm looking
almost
forward
definitely.
to going back there and seeing what Earth looks like in their vision of Starfield.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly looks like it's going to be super interesting anyway. But I mean, and I've said this before. I think I'm looking forward to Redfall more because it's going to be a little bit more of a streamlined experience. As much as I'm looking forward to Redfall, I always dread these giant open world games because
Mhm.
I know how much time will need to be invested into that game, and it's also one of those games where, and I say this about every major open world game, if you're not hooked within the first couple of hours, you'll never truly get into that game, which is
Mm.
unfortunate, but I'm exactly like that. And there's been a number of open world games that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I loved Skyrim to death. Loved it when it first came out, played it to death, did all the side quests, got all the armor, played all the DLC, loved it. But I didn't quite click with Fallout, and I think that's due to the janky combat and things like that. And I liked it, but I didn't love it enough to finish it like I did Skyrim. And there's been a number
Mm.
of open world games that I've loved, and some that I just don't get into as much as I would want to. And I've been super hyped for them, and then it comes around, and I'm like, oh, this feels more like a chore than it does anything else. My only
Mhm.
hope for Starfield is that it doesn't feel like a chore, and the whole thing just, and it doesn't need to be always fun, but what Starfield needs to be is always interesting.
Mm.
Like you're
It needs to
always
get that.
something
It needs to
interesting
intrigue
to
you
do.
to continue playing.
Definitely, the with it being a space exploration game, there needs to be intriguing things, or there needs to be intriguing storylines to follow, or intriguing planets to check out, and there needs to be a reason to check these planets out other than just going to get parts. Like there needs to be,
Mhm.
okay, so I've heard there's a rumor on this planet that such and such happened and this, and you go and investigate it and see what's going on here. Like it needs to be
Mm.
something interesting, like whimsical stories and mad
I
rumors
feel
that
like they
people
need
hear.
to have moments like, I mean, we all love a good sci-fi alien sort of invasion type movie. If you're big into sci-fi films, they need to have
There needs
moments
to be
like
like a
that as
horror
well.
moment in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a moment where you're like, I don't know, on a planet, and then all of a sudden, ships are just coming out of nowhere, and it's hostile territory until whatever happens. Those type of moments, they need to be in that game as well.
But even
And
like
I
I'd
and
say
I
like a
fully
Prometheus
expect it to
moment.
be.
Like even like a kind of
Mm.
Prometheus moment where you go to a planet and there's just like a crashed ship in the middle of nowhere, but there's no like sign of anybody, and then like there's like in the background you just see something like speeding past the camera,
Mm.
and you're like, what the fuck was that?
Mm. What
Uh,
was that?
yeah, and you're just like, oh shit, but you never actually see it. It's always like just off the edge of the
Mm.
camera, and you're just swooping past.
If they don't put an alien Easter egg in there, or like a Prometheus Easter egg in it, it's a missed opportunity to go to a planet that's essentially barren wasteland, and it's got like a, I don't know, an alien ship, and you decide you want to go and explore it, and then things just go wrong,
And that's
and
what
that
the
would
kind
be
of these are the
cool.
kind of stories that I hope they have in it. Like some that are like nice stories, some that are like, as you mentioned, these awesome ship battles that just appear out of nowhere with like loads of things just zooming in, and there's like a giant war going on between the factions. And then you go to another
They
kind of
definitely
section
need
of
a
the
few of those
galaxy,
big
and it's
Star Wars sort of space combat moments.
yeah, like I say, like for me, it's more like going to like one of the unexplored sections of these thousand planets, and something's just not quite right about it, and it's like it's eerie, and it's got like that kind of alien slash Prometheus vibe to it.
Yeah,
Like
that
that's the kind of
foggy, atmospheric,
yeah, where it's like really
got to set
creepy,
the
and like
tone with the music as well, with the creepy like
some of your
background
shipmates
music.
start going like missing and things like that, and like your crew members start just disappearing. You're like, what is going on? And you're finding like limbs and things everywhere.
Mm.
Like these are the kind of like mad stories in this big
Mhm.
open exploration of space that you need to have for me, and that's the kind of thing that I hope they have. Now, of course, it might not be that ambitious. People are saying it's more ambitious than we thought, but
Mm.
that's the kind of thing I hope that they've got in there. Like just
It would be
just wild
interesting
stories.
if, I mean, I don't expect them to do this, but it would be interesting if there was like this mechanic where you could pick up an alien virus and then you give it to another character in your crew or whatever, and you could potentially lose that character if you don't get them seen like with medical attention right off the bat. That could be something that could be a cool mechanic, but I don't think we'll see that.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But who knows? Maybe I'm
to be
wrong.
fair, I'm still super hyped for it, but again, I'm also cautiously
Hmm.
optimistic, because with a big game like that, specifically with a big game like Starfield or your Skyrims or your Elder Scrolls, etc., the entire game needs to hit in order to keep you interested enough to play it for its duration, which is hundreds of hours. It's not like it's not a 70 hour game. Like, these games are hundreds of hours long. And the game needs to hit pretty much immediately, or at least interest you and intrigue you immediately, in order to keep you playing. So I just hope that the stories they've created in this world are super interesting and very intriguing. That's the only thing I hope for it. And again, I'm a super, if people can't tell already, the one thing I always ask for from a game, when I know that the gameplay is going to be cool, or the crafting or the ship building, like all that stuff's cool. Like crafting all your weapons, and the weapons look awesome, and the gunplay looks awesome compared to Fallout or any other Bethesda game. And then you've got the characters which look cool, and the alien races and the factions, they look cool. And the overall premise of these two factions that are against each other, but they're currently in a peacetime between each other. Like, I like that backstory. That's cool. But the one thing that I ask for all, if they've nailed the gameplay and they've nailed the looks of the game, is that the story is on point, which is what I said about Redfall, and it's the same thing I'll say about Starfield. The stories that they create in this world need to be on point for me. As if within the first 5 hours of the game, I'm super engrossed in the stories that I'm playing and the world that I'm in, and I really want to go and get that next thing to upgrade the ship and turn into this ship that I want to create, then I know that I'm going to be there for the long run. If within those first 5 hours I feel like it's a bit of a slugfest and I'm not really getting anywhere, nothing's really happened, and the story isn't really going anywhere, then it's just going to end up getting shelved and I'll be playing something else.
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah, that overall, for me, my one hope now, hearing the feedback on its ambition and how great the world is and things like that, is let's now just hope the stories that they've created in both of these, Redfall and Starfield, nail it.
I just hope that they've took a lot of inspiration from a lot of those space sci-fi movies like Interstellar, Aliens,
Absolutely
Predator,
Interstellar.
all those sort of like alien themed films. They need to hit the marks for people of sci-fi fans that like different types of space sci-fis, like the people that like their big open battles in space from Star Wars, or like a horrifying element um, with the aliens and the xenomorphs and stuff like that. They need to hit all those subgenres of space sci-fi and have something in there for people that like those different subgenres in those sci-fi films.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Interstellar's a great one as well, by the way. And the one thing I think
One of
we
my
we
favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love that movie. I
oh,
watch it
I've
once a
watched it
year at
countless
least.
times. Countless times I've seen that film now. I think at least 10. At least.
So the thing is, I never saw it in cinema, but when I did eventually get round to seeing it, I was like, damn, I wished I'd seen this in cinema.
It would have been absolutely epic, because I was exactly the same. I didn't see it in the cinema, and I absolutely wished I had now, because that is like one of my all-time favorite films. Like, the soundtrack by Hans Zimmer was just phenomenal. It was absolutely out of this world, the soundtrack, and it's like sticks in my head now. But then
I just put the
the
soundtrack on every
story
now
and
and
the
then as well, and just listen
acting
to
and
it.
the visuals and going to different, and there's another thing as well, like going to different planets, and they all have their own kind of rules of physics. Like, one of them, time is completely different when you're on planet to when you're off it. So because of its size, because it's a super-sized planet, like a day is the equivalent of 7 years out on the ship, out in space. And so when they come back out to space, the guy's like, "Oh, well, he's aged like 20 odd years. They're like, what has happened? Like, why? It's like, how long have we been down there? It's like, you've been, no, it's like a couple of, actually, it's every tick. If this is another clever thing about the film, just to kind of sidetrack a bit here. On that planet, when they're on that planet with the water, there's a little ticking noise in the background, and people haven't picked up on it, but that tick, that one tick
It's like
is, I
every
think,
year,
is
right?
a
One
year.
tick is 1 year.
One tick is a year gone in space, and you hear it in the
I need to
background.
watch it
Tick,
again soon.
tick,
It's about that time.
tick. So every tick you hear on the soundtrack in the background, it is very faint, is a year in space. But that's so ingenious to put that in. That's the kind of thing you need to kind of get into Starfield somehow. These kind of, every planet has different rules. Like, you're not going to go into every planet and every planet has the same gravity, or every planet has the same weather, or every planet has this. Like, everything needs to be different. It needs to feel different wherever you explore. And I just hope they do it. And I hope they kind of do, like some of the vistas we saw in Interstellar with the black hole, or the kind of the ambience
The
of
singularity.
yeah, it's just phenomenal. And
I
that's the
hope
kind
they
of thing.
don't skimp on those moments as well. If there is like a singularity and you can pass through it, go all out with the effects. Don't throw a loading screen in my face, because that will just piss me off.
That's the one thing. I think the one thing we can be thankful of for Starfield is that it is, thankfully, it is current gen only and PC only, which means that the idea, the thought of Starfield will not be held back by any previous generation. In its thought process or what it can do, and I just hope that they've, as much as they've got the grand sense of scale's one thing, but like the universe is a very bright and vibrant place, and galaxies look different, and universes look different, especially when kind of from a distance, and then you've got like supernovas and things like that kicking off, and I just hope that they've took a lot of these like elements from space and they've put that in the game as well. That's
that's something they need to do. Like, there's so many elements to space that can be horrifying. You could asteroid come out of bloody nowhere and hit your ship, and then you'd be stranded on the planet until you
like an
repaired it or
asteroid
something
shower
like
or
that.
something like that, like a
Yeah.
meteor shower.
Or like you said, you could be about to pass through somewhere and a supernova goes off.
Yeah.
And you need to get the hell out of there quick, otherwise you're going to burn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so many things that we hope for, whether or not they include all of it in the game, but you want to see, essentially what we want to see. We don't expect all of it to be in there, but one thing we want to see is an understanding and an idea that they've at least thought about these things and they've got a lot of that type of stuff in there, or at least they've thought about putting that stuff in there to some extent, or they've put a lot of different kind of things like that we wouldn't have thought of. Even they might even included certain things that we wouldn't have thought of and put it in there, but ultimately that's what I want to see from Starfield. But yeah, it's getting exciting now. It's a really exciting.
It definitely needs to have the soundtrack as well to match the game. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. That's why I mentioned Hans Zimmer.
Needs the good sort of soundtrack, like a Hans Zimmer Interstellar soundtrack, where it just builds the track. A lot of that music in Interstellar builds throughout the track, and it's so fucking good.
If it doesn't, I'm just gonna just literally put on the Interstellar soundtrack and then just play the game with the Interstellar soundtrack going on in the background. Simple as that. Oh dear me, dear me. Before we move on though and start talking about PSVR and the PlayStation liquid cooling and things like that, just going to summarize kind of the first party and Game Pass Day 1 titles that are coming out within the first 6 months of this year. And there is a few, and these are just some of the bigger ones. Not everything, because of course we know there's going to be a lot of smaller titles as well getting jam-packed into there. But of course, we've got Starfield reported as a June release, Redfall reported as a May release, Forza Motorsport as a spring release, Minecraft Legends is also on their website said it is releasing in the spring of 23, so Minecraft Legends coming out then. Age of Empires 2 on console is coming out this month on the 31st, and Age of Empires 4 is releasing in fall. We've then got Diablo releasing on June 6th. We have Stalker 2 releasing Game Pass, of course, on day 1. And that is going to be scheduled first half of 23. However, of course, don't be surprised if that gets a minor delay to the second half. Arc 2 is still scheduled for the first half of 23. Flintlock Siege of Dawn is coming to Xbox the first half of 23. Last Case of Benedict Fox is coming to Game Pass the first half of 23. You've also got Monster Hunter Rise coming on January 20th in Game Pass. Persona 3 and 4 coming on January 19th into Game Pass. Hollow Knight, first half of 23, going into Game Pass. Wo Long, March 6th, going into Game Pass. A Union Chronicles 100 Heroes, which is the JRPG. Shout out to Gruesome Glenn. A Union Chronicles 100 Heroes looks absolutely fantastic. It's a 2.5D traditional JRPG, and it looks absolutely tremendous. It has 100 playable characters in that game. 100 playable characters in the JRPG. So there's a lot of choice. Every character's got their own movesets and things like that. But the game looks absolutely phenomenal so far. Super hyped about that. It's been one that I've been... From the original Euden Chronicles that came out last year, that was more of a platformer. That was cool, but it wasn't the one that I was waiting for. This one is the one that I've been waiting for, and I cannot wait for it. Looks absolutely insane. And shout out to that indie developer. But it's also the developer that created the original Suikoden games, Suikoden 1 and 2. So he has got pedigree in the industry. He knows what he's doing, and he's creating a really phenomenal looking 2.5D JRPG. They're also voice acted, so despite it being pixel art, the characters are voice acted as well, which is another great thing to kind of add to that. So shout out to them. On top of that, we've also got Lies of P coming day 1 into Game Pass. Now, obviously, Jen, being new to the Souls-like genre yourself and playing Bloodborne, is Lies of P now something that you're more interested in? It's a Souls-like game in the world of Pinocchio.
That'll be interesting. And that'll be interesting to see how much of the story they keep into the game without changing, obviously, some things for the game so it's original.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely on my list of games to play. I mean, it already was. It's going in Game Pass. I'm gonna try it anyway. But now, like, I've sort of taken a proper step into playing Souls games with Demon Souls. Looking forward to that a lot more. And hopefully, it's a banger.
Yeah, most definitely. There's a lot of games coming. These are all on all of these aside from Diablo are all Game Pass day 1. On top of Lies of P, we've also got Warhammer 40k Darktide, of course, which got delayed on consoles. It went out to PC first, but that is coming.
On my PC.
I'm just gonna wait and play it on console. To be fair,
that's probably what I'll do now. Time for me to try that out on PC.
We've got plenty time. We've got plenty time. On top of Warhammer 40k Darktide, we've also got Planet of Lana by Wishfully, which I'm really looking forward to. That looks phenomenal. That's like without all of the jumping around and things, like an Ori
background, right?
Yeah, like an Ori art style. It looks phenomenal. Yeah. Another awesome indie game, Replaced by Sad Cat Studios, is also coming out in the first half of 23. That's also on Game Pass. That's another voxel art version of the game, of a bit like I've forgotten the name of it now. That everyone was waiting for a long time, but Replaced is actually coming out. So thankfully, and that looks absolutely awesome. And the last Game Pass title that we know of for the first half of 2023 is Atomic Heart, of course, releasing on the 21st of Feb. And that is going into Game Pass day 1 as well. Aside from that, massive releases we've got this year so far that we know of. One Piece Odyssey releases in January. Dead Space also releases in January. Deliver Us Mars releases in February. Hogwarts Legacy releases in February. Wild Hearts releases in February. Wild Hearts, for those who haven't seen that yet, that is a new multiplayer Monster Hunter-esque game. It looks very cool. Definitely stylized. It's already on PC. So if you want to check it out and see what that's all about, it's on PC now. So you can
What's
actually
that other one that's like got Pokemon in it but guns as
Pal
well?
World.
Power World, yeah. I'm
Yes,
looking
Pal
forward to
World is
that.
coming to Game Pass day one as well, but that's not the first half of 23. But that is 2023.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be silly fun. Just got
Yes,
to kill them
yeah,
all.
yeah, got to kill them all. It does look awesome, to be fair. On top of that, we've also got Like a Dragon Ishin coming the 21st of February. That looks awesome. It's a more condensed, old school version of Like a Dragon, but it's a little bit more serious with a lot of awesome sword combat and kind of old pistol combat and things in there. That looks great. The big one, Jedi Star Survivor,
That's in
March
right?
17th. Yeah. Uh,
Can't wait.
We also have Resident Evil 4 Remake, March 24th.
That's also in March. Damn it,
Yeah.
March is so busy.
Yeah, well, February was even worse. We had Deliver Us Mars, Hogwarts, Wild Heart, and Like a Dragon Ishin. March, of course, as we say, and Resident Evil. March, Jedi Survivor and Resident Evil 4. April, we've got Dead Island 2. May, we've got Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. June, we also have Street Fighter 6 on June 2nd. That is followed by, of course, Diablo 4, which is June 6th. We've also got two other confirmed for this year, which is Alan Wake 2 by Remedy and Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, which is also at some point this year. And that is just the ones that we know of. All of the ones that are coming on the Game Pass and Game Pass Day 1 are all within the first 6 months. And the other titles, the third parties, are scattered throughout the year, but the vast majority are within the first 6 months. So basically, all of that list, aside from 2 games, are the first 6 months of the year. That is insane.
Yeah, this year's going to be very picky and choosy, I'll tell you that.
And that's not including...
think about what you want to play first.
And that's just Xbox. That's not including if you go over to Nintendo and you've got the brand new Zelda coming out in a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you go over to PlayStation and you've got Forspoken, Final Fantasy 16, and Spider-Man 2 coming out this year so far. It's packed. It's packed. It is rammed. And I've even taken out a couple of games that were on there for Game Pass Day 1 because it was only PC, and that was Aura, History Untold, among a couple of other kind of PC-only games. And the only reason I haven't included them, of course, is because they are PC only. And the vast majority of console gamers aren't going to play those games. So, wow. I do not know, honestly, where I'm going to get the time. And I can count, let's have a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I, out of all of that list, have 23 games I want to play in the first 6 months.
Bloody hell. Yeah, you're going to have to pick and choose there.
I mean, this is the thing I'm saying about Starfield needs to hit it. Because there's a lot, like, it needs to fight for my time. When there's 23 games coming out in the first 6 months that I want, the vast majority of which are on Game Pass, which means I can play them immediately. Like, that Starfield needs to hit it out the park with that grasp. If it hits it out the park, then it has my time. It needs to fight for that time.
Yep, because there's plenty more games out there that can fill that void.
And that's the ones we know of. That's not including the fact that we know there's a showcase in June which will detail the latter 6 months and the next 6 months of next year. It's like it is 2023 for video games is just insane. And these aren't little games. These are all major titles. Like, wow.
I still wouldn't be surprised though if some of them get shifted to the later half of the year. Not the big games, like Starfield ain't moving, Redfall's not moving,
Jedi's not moving.
they're staying where they are. Jedi Fallen Order is not moving.
No.
That game is too big to move. I think the first one came out in March as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to be playing.
Yeah. This is the problem. Everything. We're going to be dabbling.
Mm.
My
See,
ADHD is going to be
see,
going
the thing
wild.
is, I'm sitting there thinking, do I pick Resident Evil over Star Wars? Or do I pick Star Wars over Resident Evil? Because I'm going to be playing either one of them on stream.
You know you want Star Wars more. You know you do. After seeing that gameplay
I
footage.
know, but I've always got every Resident Evil game when they've come out
Yeah.
without fail.
After
Well,
seeing
obviously,
that, I
like
was going to say after seeing that
the
gameplay
recent ones,
footage,
not
you
the
definitely
old
want to play
classics.
Starfield. Not Starfield, sorry, Jedi.
Yeah, I definitely want to play not Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
It's I think that's going to be a flip of a coin. That.
Yep. Oh, definitely. Busy, 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 busy. But it's awesome. It's first world problems, absolute first world problems, but it's good, nice problems to have in comparison to last year, especially the last 6 months of last year, where there wasn't.
Yeah, last year I can't really say I got to a point where I was like, oh shit, what do I play? There's so many games coming out. What do I choose to play?
Yep. Yep. This year's an entirely different kettle of fish. But I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Bring it on. If I don't play them now, I will definitely play them soon.
My backlog is going to get bigger. I'm not looking
Oh yeah.
forward to it. I need to start looking up some of these games that I'm already like playing before these games
Yeah.
start hitting.
Absolutely. And we don't have much time. We don't have. January is probably the only time where we kind of do. Dead Space hits in January, so
See, I'm not too fussed about Dead Space. I've played it before. I know it's
yeah,
going to be great.
yeah,
I can wait for that.
yeah. Might take this time to just catch up on backlog then.
Mm. Yeah, I might just take this time to catch up on the backlog. I've got Gotham Knights and I've played it for an hour. An hour because Fallout had me and I was too busy thinking about Fallout when I was playing Gotham Knights.
Are you still playing Fallout as well?
Yep. I'm like close to the end of the main story, I think. I'm not sure because I've never beat the main story on the game before. It's always one of them games that I get distracted, and by the time I get round to getting back to the main story, I'm kind of burnt out by playing the game. So I ended up moving on to something else. But this time round, I've pushed through. Um, I'm near the end, I think. So I'm going to push through, complete that, move on to the DLC, complete that, and then I've still got Miles Morales to do.
Thankfully, that's a shorter title. That's like 20 hours.
Demon Souls.
Yeah.
And I've got Elden Ring I want to play now because I'm playing Demon Souls.
But obviously,
Choices.
Elden Ring's like a 70-hour game, so just beware.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Maybe I'll save Elden Ring for later in the year in a quiet month.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's too many choices. I know that March is going to come and I'm going to have to pick between two franchises that I love.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's gonna be one of those times. Certainly is. But let's move on to the next topic here, and that is the PlayStation VR 2. So during CES, of course, Sony announced numerous things, including the PSVR 2, and the fact that it will, of course, launch with up to 30 games, which is obviously good news for PlayStation fans, but bad news at the same time, of course, because we know that it will not be backwards compatible with any PSVR 1 games, which means you will have to start your collection from scratch. An expensive launch indeed if there's 30 games to choose from. So the key features of the PSVR 2, of course, inbuilt OLED display with 2000 by 2040 per eye resolution. The PSVR 2 offers incredible picture quality. The new Sense controllers are ergonomic controllers with motion sensors and haptic feedback, but it does require a PlayStation 5 to function. It cannot be ran individually or independently like the MetaQuest 2 or the Pico 4. The article states that I was very pessimistic over PSVR 2 before trying it for myself. It is a high price and need to be plugged into a PS5 meant that it faced an uphill battle to challenge existing headsets such as the MetaQuest 2 and the Pico 4. But then I was given the opportunity to try out PSVR 2 at CES, and I came away seriously impressed. This could be one of the very best VR headsets I've ever used. OLED display looked fantastic, and haptic feedback was incredibly immersive, and the eye tracking technology felt delightfully futuristic. Factor in the more ergonomic controllers, and there's no doubt this is a massive upgrade from the original PSVR. I was able to spend 30 minutes with PSVR 2 while playing the launch title Horizon Call of the Mountain, and here are my thoughts. Price and availability. Sony has confirmed the PSVR 2 will be $549 or £529, or for the Europeans, £599.99 at launch. Euros. It will become available to buy on February 22nd this year, with pre-orders already open now. The design, he said it felt comfortable to wear throughout the 30-minute demo. Just one wire needed to be connected to the PlayStation 5, and haptic feedback built into the headset as well. Sony's PSVR 2 has a simple design with a padded visor at the front and a halo-shaped strap that wraps snugly around my head. A dial at the rear will tighten the headset's fit so it doesn't slip off your face. I'm impressed with how comfortable the headset was to wear for 30 minutes. Not once did I need to adjust the headset during my 30-minute demo. That's not only helped by the padding that Sony used, but also by ensuring the weight is well distributed. Sony hasn't needed to worry about installing a battery, as it's powered through the cable connected to the PlayStation 5. Unlike the original PSVR 2, you only need to plug in one cable, a substantially more streamlined solution than the first PSVR, which was a nightmare to set up. PSVR 2 has haptic feedback built into the headset itself, which would give my noggin a little rumble whenever a dinosaur walked by in Horizon Call of the Mountain. The vibrations aren't quite as aggressive as I expected, but offer just enough feedback to boost the immersion. The built-in cameras on the PSVR 2 ensure you don't need to set up external sensors for the headset to register your head movements. It all works flawlessly, whether I was just tilting my head or walking around the play area. The controllers are now more ergonomic. Capacitive sensors can detect finger placement, and haptic feedback similar to PS5 DualSense as well. The biggest reason I struggle with the original PSVR 2 is because the controllers are so poor, with some experiences even requiring you to use a standard DualShock controller, which dilutes the immersion. The PSVR 2 rectifies this with far more ergonomic pads. Each controller has a couple of buttons up top, triggers at the rear, and an analog stick. They're very similar to the Quest's controllers. Capacitive sensors enable the controllers to detect your finger placement even when you're not pressing down on the buttons. That means when you're able to naturally clench your fist, grab an object, or even give another player a thumbs up in the middle with the middle finger. The user-friendly ergonomics of the sensor controllers ensured I could quickly pick up mechanics such as climbing a ladder or pulling down on a bow, and haptic feedbacks also give my hands a little rumble as I pull back on the bow, releasing the tension as I pinged an arrow across the canyon. I didn't spend much time with the controllers to find out how long they last on a single charge, but you can juice them up with a USB-C connection. Performance. The vibrant high-resolution display, eye tracking useful for the menu navigation, and requires a PS5 to function. OLED display is one of the most impressive aspects of the VR2. Colors look incredibly vibrant with reach detail thanks to the 2000 by 2040 per eye resolution. That's almost just as pixel-packed as the 799 Vive Pro 2. As a result, I never noticed screen dot effect during the demo. The headset offers support for 90Hz and 120Hz, which should not only ensure a fast motion can be displayed clearly, but also can reduce risk of motion sickness. I'm excited to see how other developers will make use of the feature. So yes, a lot of good details there. By the sounds of things, great impressions. Of course, I'm not going to be getting one, even at that price. It's $600. It's just too much. That's not including games. And of course, you
Yeah,
do still
I
need
couldn't
the
care less.
PS5 to function, but good impressions all round, at least for the PlayStation 5. What's your thoughts on kind of that initial impression of it anyway? It sounds like
The
someone who didn't have a
30
great
games.
experience with the PSVR, but he's obviously had a much better experience with this one, so that's obviously good news because that sounds like someone that was quite pessimistic going into testing it.
Yeah, I didn't get on well with the first PSVR. Like I've mentioned before, motion sickness. I'm not interested in paying 600 to find out motion sickness is still affected. A lot of people say you need to spend a lot more time in VR to get used to it, but unfortunately, I haven't got the patience or the stomach to even give that a try. I don't think I'll ever really get into VR. Um, the 30 games, that does sound interesting, but again, is it going to be 30 games or are they going to be technical demos more than anything just to show you, look what this can do? Has there been any word on how long that Horizon, was it Call of the Mountain or something like that?
It's meant to be a full-fledged game. It's meant to be
It's
like a
meant to be a
20-hour
full
game.
fledged game.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I guess that's pretty interesting. But how many of these other games are going to be shovelware 2 hour experiences that you throw in your cupboard and forget about afterwards?
Well, we know they're going to include things like Half-Life Alyx. We know there's going to be Beat Saber is going to be on there as well, which is highly popular. Um,
Hmm.
but
Half Life Alex is a good get. I've
yeah,
heard great things about that game. If I was into VR, it would be a game I'd pick up if I was going to get this.
absolutely.
I've
But I think
I've seen
they,
two of my friends play this in VR, and um, it looks really good.
I
So
think,
yeah,
but by the sounds of things, the games that they are creating from a first-party perspective for VR are going to be kind of more longer titles along the lines of your Half-Life Alyx.
good.
So
That's good.
full experiences.
Because that's where VR needs to be. It needs to be 10 hours plus, maybe 20 hours, and not like most of the things that came out on the first PSVR, where most of them were just like 2 hour, 2 to 3 hour technical demos, just to really showcase what VR can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Again, it's not something both
If
me
they
or
could, if they
go
could
on.
do a Last of Us type experience, and basically have that be their call to Half Life Alex, that would be interesting. Again, it's not something I'd pick up and play because I'm not really into VR. So, but yeah, it's for people that are, those are the type of games that need to exist. They need to take their PlayStation franchises and do something in VR with it. I mean, could you imagine playing God of War in VR and just raising your hand up to call the axe back towards you, or using the chain swords and or having to use the shield or whatever? Those are the experiences Sony need to aim for this PSVR, and hopefully that's something they're going to work towards getting this out earlier in the generation than they did with the first iteration of PSVR, because that came sort of more closer to the midpoint, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's a good sign for them with VR, and I will be tuning into Acer streaming it because I'm sure he's going to get that. So I'll check that out, see what he has to say about it.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. He's got. To be fair, he's got all the equipment. So if you're going to be listening to anybody about VR and how good
Mm,
VR is, Ace is the right man to do
mm.
it. So head over to
Definitely, yeah. He's got like
Acer on
the
Game On
whole
Daily, and he's
treadmill. I think he's got a few different VR headsets. He's very big into VR. He wants them to push more into VR experience. I'm personally not too bothered about it, but to each their own. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna tune into Acer, see what he has to say about it, watch him play a few of the releases, and see if it's worth it. Uh, Obviously, I won't pick it up myself. Just more curiosity to see if it'll be better than the first one.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's not something I'd rush to get, to be honest. If I was ever to try it later on in the gen, it would be if I can get it on a super deep discount. Um, and then when the games have also had time to have a discount and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I'll try it out. Late, like late,
I'm
late on in the
guessing.
gen.
I'm guessing all their VR games are going to match the 70 price point as well.
Hopefully, we'll have to wait and see. They haven't really mentioned that yet, so we'll see what the price point is there.
I'd imagine they would. It's Sony. I'd be
Yeah,
surprised if they don't.
I suppose we'll wait and see. We shall wait and see. But Jen, uh, you also had a couple of articles you wanted to kind of, or at least a couple of points you wanted to talk about. So, what you got for me?
Well, the first one I've got for you is there's a new Gears of War game, but it's a card game. And no, it's not a video game. A lot of people were confused about this because there was a lot of tweets and a lot of people throwing shade at this, but it's not a video game. It's not one of them downloadable apps on your phone where you're going to be spending loads of money with microtransactions and stuff like that. It's just your typical generic um, physical card game, a bit like a board game or something like that. I'm not too sure how in depth the card game's going to be. There is only a picture of it. It's the box art. A few of the decks of cards you get. One's got the locust symbol on it. One's got the cog symbol, and there's like a shield symbol on the other ones. But yeah, it looks like it could be interesting. With the Gears of War lore thrown into it, it could be a lot of fun. No ideas how many players it's going to be. Um, so if you've got your friends around and you're playing a physical card game, I'm not sure how many players in total it will be, but I'd imagine it'll be something like 4 to 6, maybe even more. But yeah, it's that's pretty much it for that. They're going to be, I think, showing off more of it. I think it's what's it, esports thing for Gears 5. Um,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
so yeah, it'll be shown off properly there. I guess we'll learn more about it. But this is coming from the creators that did I believe they did a Dark Souls board game, Elden Ring board game. I think they've done something for The Witcher as well. I'm blanking on the name of the team now. Where is it? Uh, I can't find it now. The name of the team. Um, Steam Forged, they're called Steam Forged Games, and they basically just specialize in making board games and miniature games. You know, like Warhammer 40K and stuff like that. They do something similar to that. And then the next story I've got here is Elden Ring has actually broke the record for most Game of the Year awards ever. It beat Last of Us out by, I believe, 2 awards. Yep, Last of Us had Last of Us 2 had 322 Game of the Year awards back in 2020, and Elden Ring has broke that by 2. It has 324. So yeah, it's doing big things, Elden Ring, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few more awards that will go to that over the course of the next month.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And congrats to the developers behind Elden Ring. Fully deserved.
Definitely.
Fully deserved.
And there is another one that it's just more of just a small brief thing.
Yeah.
Hitman 3 is being rebranded as World of Assassinations. So think along the lines of like what they did with the Master Chief Collection. They're basically going to put Hitman 1, 2, and 3 all into one sort of launching off point, and then you can play all those Hitman games through that.
Yes. Yes, indeed. That's certainly very interesting. And of course, you had that little snippet there of the reported issue with liquid cooling on the PS5.
Oh yes, we had that as well, didn't we? I almost
Yeah.
forgot about that. But yeah, I'm not too bothered about it. My PlayStation's got the extended warranty. Mine's also one of the newer PlayStation models, which I don't think this issue is prone to in this model. If
Yeah.
it is, I'm not too worried about it. Um, like I said, I've got the extended warranty. That's going to cover me for a few years. So if I do have an issue and it can't be fixed, they'll replace it. So
Yep.
I'm not too worried about it. That's why you get the extended warranty, people.
Yeah. Yep. And it's maybe just a minor design flaw there that they've used liquid metal on the CPU there instead. Um, I can understand why in vertical mode it would cause an issue, because of course if the liquid metal does get too hot and it starts to not just to leak but to move in vertical, of course the only way it can move is down, which is off the chip itself, which would then of course cause a heat issue. Of course
That's
in
again another reason why I don't understand why they went with a liquid cooling system.
they could, I mean, they could. It's liquid metal as well. If they went with a liquid cooling
Mm.
system, it might have been a better issue, because, of course, there's mobile phones these days. All the brand new Samsungs and most of the phones now have liquid cooling inside of them to help keep the temperature down with all these super hot chips. But they didn't opt for that. They opted for liquid metal instead of the fan, and of course, it didn't help with the size at all. So it's strange that they went for that. It's probably going to be a more costly solution for cooling as well, to be fair. But hey ho, I don't think it's going to be as wide of an issue. It's more longevity, and how long you play the console for. For instance, if you're going to be playing the console all of the time, then it could become an issue. But if you're the type of gamer that maybe plays it maybe 2 hours or less, or even maybe 3 hours or less a day, I don't think you could have much of an issue with it, to be fair. I think it's going to be fine.
There is
Yeah.
another thing that I forgot to mention,
Oh, go on.
thank you to Fanto for reminding me about that. But their new um, accessibility controller, the Project Leonardo, I think it's called. It's
Yes.
going to be highly customizable by the looks of it, um, and it's a big step for Sony to start moving in a direction thinking about accessibility controllers. Apparently, they worked with a few different accessibility places to help sort of put this together. I think one of them was Special Effects, which we did the charity drive for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good step for Sony in the right direction. Hopefully, this isn't too pricey and expensive, because it shouldn't be. Everyone should be able to get into games and have fun with games.
I agree.
So yeah, don't overprice this. Let you know, let people get this accessibility controller for an accessible price point, because that counts as well.
Yeah, completely. And it's great to see them eventually getting into it. So hats off to them.
Mm.
Hopefully this prototype kind of only improves over time, and it does hit the market well.
Mm.
One thing I will say is that I hope they reduce the price on it. Xbox's accessibility controller starts at £79. The reported Leonardo price starts at £250. It's a vast difference in pricing there.
Yeah, that's not great. You know, you think they would have a more accessible price point.
So it's a rather costly way for someone, and that's per one. So if if you require two controllers, which is a thing, they said you can use two if needs be. That's 500, and that's not including then the secondary controllers that you plug into it, which is essentially what you're meant to do with these anyways. They're meant to have numerous points that you can plug in all of your additional things there that have been built for you that you can plug in that are always either via an aux cable or something like that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they come up with a solution that's a little bit less pricey for those with accessibility issues or less abled to get
Yeah,
into it.
definitely. They need to make it an accessible price point, because it's not fair that they make it expensive. You know, it's easy for us to pick up a £50 or £60 controller, but for someone to have to pay $200 plus for a controller, it's not really fair.
It was £259. It was which the one thing I thought was that's a pretty steep entry price for an accessibility controller from a company like Sony. I can understand it from a random specialized company that's kind of building them out of their own backs and things like that. But 250? Come on, Sony. You can do
Yeah, it's
you
pretty
can do
ridiculous.
better. It's accessibility. These are not controllers that ship to everybody. There's a very finite amount of people that want these
That
controllers.
that price point is not accessibility. If it was
No.
accessibility, you'd have a price point to match that.
Yeah. And it's not the
An
knock on them,
accessible
because
price
I'm glad
point,
they're
not
actually getting into it and creating
ridiculous.
these controllers, but
Mm.
ultimately, if you're creating an accessibility controller, you need to make it accessible on all fronts. And I don't just mean on the fact that they're able to play games. I mean that they're actually able to afford these items to play games.
Mhm.
Like, it's all well and
Definitely.
good creating a controller, but if the person with the disability cannot afford that item, then it kind of nullifies the premise in the first place, which is what we kind of want to try and avoid. And of course, then have to go to funding or go through charities in order to get them on loan. So, yeah, fingers crossed when it's a finalized product, the price comes down a bit for them. I think as an entry price, you need to have it far lower than that. Even if they can get it down to,
I mean,
even if they can get it down to like 100 per unit.
there's places you can go to get controllers cheaper than that,
Well,
custom made.
the Xbox accessibility controller is readily available for 80 quid.
Mm. Yeah, that isn't a good look for Sony. The price point for that. You're trying to be more accessible to gamers by making this controller, and yeah, I get that it's customizable and you can add stuff to it and change stuff out depending on your what's the word I'm looking for? Depending on your
Your ability or
bodily issue,
lack thereof.
your ability. Yeah, it's not a good look. Then it needs to have, like we've already said, an accessible price point.
Yeah,
It just
absolutely.
seems like they're taking advantage of people with accessibility issues there.
I just think that they certainly need to work on. Personally, I just think they need to work on the price. Is what they need to do. It's hats off for them to creating the controller and actually getting an accessibility controller under wraps. But the pricing needs work. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You've got to be accessible on all fronts, and we're talking, especially right now with the cost of living, and that goes including those with disabilities who are going to be struggling more. Because of course those with disabilities aren't going to be out the house like we are at work, where we can have the gas and electric off. A lot of these people need the gas and electric on all the time, and the price of utilities right now is that high. It's hard to afford many things else. And of course, their allowance doesn't go up based on it. Their allowance is exactly the same as what it was, regardless of what inflation does. So, yeah. Sony, well done on creating an accessibility controller. It looks fantastic. There's a lot of things going right for it, but work on the price. I think you need to be better with that.
Definitely, it needs to come down significantly.
Yep. But yeah, it is good to see them getting into it. Actually, I was on Etsy the other day just looking at random kind of random normal person created kind of accessories you can get for Xbox and consoles and things these days, and I come across a one-handed modification that's been 3D printed for controllers, which was absolutely awesome. It was a little bit steep on the price front. It was like 75 quid. But again, you have to appreciate, as I mentioned before, these are created by people in their houses. So it's their own gas and electric getting used to create these items. It's their own parts and things like that. So I appreciate the price might be a little bit higher from someone working in the house. But from the feedback I saw on the reviews from people with one hand or had recently been in an accident and lost a hand or something like that, the controllers help them get back into the modification, at least, that attaches to the controllers really helps them get back into gaming. So absolutely awesome. I've got the links for the PlayStation and the Xbox variants of the one-handed edition, and the person that's created it has got versions for left or right hand as well.
That's pretty cool.
And he's also got another one for Switch. So he's got PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. The Switch version's a little bit more costly because it's a far different animal, as you can imagine. It's a much smaller device. So, yeah, he's trying to create it as good as he can. I like to say great feedback from everybody who's bought them for their relatives or for themselves that have been either always without one hand or recently with only one hand. So it's great to see kind of individuals coming up with these solutions as well. So fingers crossed there's more of that. But yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap up the show, Jen.
Yep, it's been a good show.
It has.
A lot of good talking points.
It has indeed. Very exciting time for gaming. Very exciting time for gaming. But super looking forward. Was I muted for that entirety there? I hope I wasn't. I might have been. I might have muted myself for the entirety of that. Never mind. I was talking about there was if people didn't hear because I was muted. Um, I found a contraption on Etsy by this awesome creator. I wasn't. Okay, that's fine. That's good. But yes, okay, then we'll wrap it up. Jen, it's been a blast as always. Good to be back on the weekend edition.
Yep, good to be back. First weekend edition of the year.
Yes, let people know, of course, where they can find you and what you're up to for the for this week.
I am back on Twitch streaming Fridays, Saturdays, and sometimes Sundays. Obviously here Wednesdays and Sundays as well, and on I'm blanking on the name of it now. Our CFE's Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, back to streaming next week, and definitely back here for the podcast next week. And you can find me on my Twitch channel, the _general_C, and same on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome stuff, awesome stuff. And Nesuko, I will DM you on Twitter the link to the one-handed one. Is it left or right hand you need? Or I can just send both of them. I'll send them across. But yes, awesome stuff, Jen, awesome stuff. And of course, we are back. As I mentioned, proves a game changer. Someone should win a Nobel Prize for something. You would think so, but there's loads of accessibility controllers. And of course, like I say, there's Xbox and PlayStation have them now. So anybody who's created anything like that should definitely be rewarded for their ingenuity in creating stuff like that. But yes, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, of course, I had a video that is, I would say, 90% finished. Unfortunately, I had an issue with the last 10%, so that's going to be re-rendered, and then I can put that out. It was originally going to go out to members first and then the public, but of course, with time getting on and with it being delayed so much due to technical issues, I'm going to just release it to everybody tomorrow. So of course, everybody will see that video tomorrow, and of course, that is detailing the biggest games releasing for Xbox in 2023. So that should be an awesome one. That's detailing when they're coming out, kind of what platforms they're going on to, whether they're on Game Pass day one or not, and of course showing some awesome gameplay footage for all of the games. So that'll be good. But other than that, you can find me everywhere at WandrinDutch, of course, as usual. On Tuesdays on Save Tuesdays Playcast, Wednesdays for the Midweek Mix-Up podcast, Wednesday evenings for primetime gaming, Thursdays for World of Gaming, and of course every second Sunday back here for the weekend edition. So from myself and from the General C, thank you very much for watching. Please, of course, if you enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe. Yes, of course, we will see you all again later on this week. Have an awesome evening, guys, and we'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.
See you later. Bye bye.